First up is Thin Lizzy with the self-titled debut album, 10 tracks for 40 minutes. As I said, debut studio album released in April 1971 via Decca Records. Produced by Scott English, the repackaged edition released in 1990 included the 4 tracks from the Rare New Day EP, which was released in August 1971 originally. Here we go. How do you go out of shot when the screen is like a foot from your face? Anyway, all songs except for 3 out of the 14, including the 4 from the EP, were written entirely by Phil Lynott. I'm going to say Lynott all night, so if I'm wrong, then I don't care. And those 3 tracks were also co-written by him. The lineup was Phil Lynott, Eric Bell, and Brian Downey, with a guest spot from Ivor Raymond. Jimmy.
The first thing I notice is how very 70s this album is. It was made in 1971, so I think that's probably fair enough. There's still a lot of 60s hippie sort of era music involved around that time, so and you can hear it on this album. You can tell straight away that Phil Lynott, now I'm going to get confused with that all night. Lynott had a real storyteller voice. I think straight from the start I could tell that.
Well, the opening track.
Yeah. Very mellow album, lots of acoustic guitars and very low distortion. I thought it was like a really conservative album, which for the time I suppose kind of makes sense again. Actually, I wrote down, this album reminds me of the movie Almost Famous. It's this great movie. If you haven't seen Almost Famous, it's fantastic. Set in 1973. The music on this album would fit perfectly with some of the scenes in that movie, I reckon. Very much still finding their real identity on this, of course. It was very interesting musically. I reckon in 1971 it might have been considered a bit of a groundbreaking album, perhaps.
Up against bands like Led Zeppelin, and that probably not so much.
Maybe the underground, you know. Anyway, I gave it an 8 out of 10.
Wow. The album shows very talented musicians who are capable of a few different styles, be it rock, folk, blues, prog, but they're not exactly sure what direction they want to go in. Phil Lynott's songwriting he's already exploring and creating characters and telling stories, and while his delivery is in a bit of the primitive stages, his themes and his honesty are those of a man well beyond his 22 years. He's had a lot of life lived up to this point, and he's using it. The band seem very intent on showing off their musical abilities and at times overplay, which isn't a bad thing, it's just common with young musicians. It's an interesting listen, and there's a lot to like about it, but if you have heard The Boys Are Back in Town and you put this album on, you'd be wondering how the hell is this the same band?
That's true.
Just how much this band has grown over the years is remarkable. I give it 6 out of 10. My standouts would be Air. I believe that's how you pronounce it. Airy. I'm going to struggle with this Irish. Return to Farmer's Stun and Clifton Grange Hotel.
I had never listened to this album before. Production I thought was quite obviously crap, but whatever. First album and 1971. I'll let him get away with it. Musically, there are some very interesting ideas on here and slight hints of where they would later go with their sound. There's mad 70s porno groove on the track Raygun.
Yeah.
Pretty sure I heard that tune in Backdoor Sluts 9. South Park joke. I actually hear some David Bowie influence on this album, and I'm not sure if I'm tripping balls or
early
not.
Bowie.
Early Bowie
Very early
with
Bowie,
early Zeppelin even.
Which is funny considering they work with Bowie's producer later on.
Well, I really enjoyed the mellow tracks on the album, probably more so than the rocky ones. As far as first albums go, it's pretty fucking good. I just wish the recording quality and production was better. I gave it a 7 out of 10 though. Standouts were Honesty Is No Excuse, Raygun, Airy, and Saga, whatever.
Being corrected by a person with Irish descent here, so.
And Saga of the Aging Orphan, which was great.
My first impression was that it was very moody, poetic lyrics, and a very interesting way to open the album with the story of the friendly ranger at Clontarf Castle. It's classic vintage style and production, warm production which suits the vinyl and the tape that was being used back then. It's dated, but it's also nostalgic, which is a good thing. It's laid back in more of the classic rock style overall, and that whole dual harmony stuff wasn't here because it's only a 3-piece. It's got nice tones captured, and I love how the vocals almost sort of clip in the production of this. It's got that really warm, fuzzy tone overall. It'd be fantastic on vinyl, no doubt. The lyrics are the standout for me on this album. such a timestamp. It's a very place in time kind of thing, and he was telling stories that were relative to him in his life in that moment. Apart from the fictional sort of stuff, but the more emotive stuff was really that time and place. Takes until about halfway through Diddy Levine to show some actual rock. Ray Gun, like you said, adds some funk and groove to the album.
Yep.
This is a very humble beginning for this band. Considering what you know it is to come, it does build throughout the album, but it's a very humble beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Production on Air, which I've been told is the correct way to pronounce it, is fantastic for the style, very much influenced by coming out of the 60s and into the early 70s. Like you said, that they're finding their feet with this record. Phil is really trying to play the storyteller role, and for the most part he nails it. Very vintage, good album dynamics, peaks and troughs and whatever else. Pretty much a tame album. It relies on the Irish folk side a little bit, in my opinion. It's a nice release overall, though, just a bit of a humble beginning. It's refreshing, in my opinion, to find that one of the greats that everyone loves didn't launch with some great debut. This actually struggled a bit. It's a bit experimental, and from that, little things, big things grow. That's where they came from, this band. I gave it a 7 out of 10. The Friendly Ranger at Clontarf Castle, Ray Gun, Look What the Wind Blew In, and Air, and we'll give you a taste.